Hey TLB Church family, it's Jasmine. If you don't know me already, I attend the youth group here at the Olive Branch and I'm helping out this summer. If you're new here, thank you for being here. We're so glad to have you. We encourage you to read along with us as we do our second part of our Book of James series with Blair. We encourage you to join us for worship and then our sermon. I hope you have an amazing day and a blessed week.
Oh, you've come to bring peace, to be love, to be nearer to us. So you've come to be life, to be light, to shine brighter in us. So we lift you well, God.
Good morning, TOB Church family. It's great to be with you guys. Hope you are doing well. If you haven't seen me around before, my name is Blair, and I work with the youth and the young adults here at the church. We're in a new series where we're looking at the book of James, and so this is a chance for you guys to open up your Bibles and take a look there at James. I'd love for you to join us there. What we learned last week, we're going to do a quick highlight thing, like what we learned just so you can catch up if you're just joining us. what we learned last week is that James is the half-brother of Jesus, and we talked about how sibling relationships are kind of difficult, right? So we talked about this reality that sometimes it's hard to have siblings do well. And so with James, we kind of call him the doubting brother. He's kind of got that sort of rep because he did reject Jesus, although all the siblings did. But James ends up coming to know Jesus as his personal Savior, but at first he's probably looking at Jesus saying, how you're claiming you're God. You're claiming you're putting the sins of the world on your shoulders, and that's impossible. And then you've got that sibling issue, right? So we've got these things that's going on in the context of James. He becomes a pillar in the faith in the Jewish Messianic time. There's this conversion that's happening with these Messianic Jews who are coming to know Jesus, and James is a pillar in the faith there. He becomes sort of one of the rocks, and the community comes to be known as a peaceful community. And James does end up dying later for it. Now remember, if we're reading Paul and then we're reading James, it's going to sound very different. So there was a word we talked about last week called practical. It's very practicality. There's this practicality with James. It's easy to follow along. It's going to challenge the mature Christian, and it's going to also kind of bring in the new Christian into what we're all about. So if you're reading Paul, you're reading the theology of the cross, and then you're reading James, it's going to look very different sort of purposes for what James was doing, writing to a Jewish community using the Sermon on the Mount, the Proverbs, and the Torah as kind of the main thing that he's drawing off of. He knew his audience quite well. One of the things that we had a tech issue last week, and it turned out to really work and emphasize a point that we were trying to make, which was this, that the trials in our lives help complete us. And so what happened is we recorded, and then I went away, and Gons called me back and said, hey, we're going to have to record this again. So I said, sure. I'm having coffee with a friend of mine who is going to serve as the illustration for the sermon. So I actually started thinking, this could work out. And my friend of mine had their dad pass away, and he told me that time had helped make him look like Jesus more, right? I was sitting there going, I can't believe this. This is how God works. He's amazing. So remember that the atheist is going to sit there and go, well, pain is just arbitrary. It just sort of happens. It's a cold, cold world. And that's the worldviews we're dealing with. So when you're in the world, no, there's a purpose to the pain. It doesn't mean we don't feel sad and like there's grief. Of course there is, but there's a purpose, there's meaning to it. And that's what James helps us see. And that's what made that illustration so fantastic. Remember, it's so easy for us to stand out now because when we're in the world, people don't think this way. So when we evangelize, we go in with this perspective that no, the pain hurts, but it's got a reason. Remember, James at the end, what we looked at was that faith is so important for James. And he said, we can't waver. We cannot waver. The question James is asking is, what do we believe about Jesus? That's what James is asking you. What do you believe about Jesus? Are you willing to risk it, to lean in, to get awkward with people, to pray with people? What are you willing to do? What do you think Jesus is? Do you think Jesus is God? Do you think he can heal our hearts and physically? And can he do this stuff for us? Can he actually change history for us? If we believe this, we're going to act differently. We're going to pray. We're going to lean into awkward moments. We're going to get out there. What do we believe? That's what James is asking us. It's a crazy challenge. You're sitting there going, oh my goodness, James, why are you so hard on me, man? Like, just relax. But he saw Jesus, and so he's going to try and push you. And what he's going to try and do is actually rattle your cage. I mean, when I read the book of James, I just keep getting shaken. I'm like, okay, what's going on? When are you going to let up on me? He doesn't want to let up. He wants to continue to push us into faith, and is saying to us, don't waver. So we got these trials. We're talking about these trials. We're talking about how we need wisdom to see these trials as things that actually complete us. And James is saying, hey, don't waver at all. That's what we talked about last week, and it was a real fun time. I had a great time with you guys. And so what we're going to be doing is starting out in James 1, 22 to 25. So if you'd like to read, join us there, that would be great. And this is going to set the tone really for the rest of the sermon, this sort of idea here. And James, again, we've talked about it, but he is about the integration of our values and our beliefs into our action. That's what he's about. What we value and believe, do we do it? That's what James is trying to challenge us with. So let's read James 1, 22 to 25. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. But whoever looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it, basically continues doing it, not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, right? They will be blessed in what they do. So James starting right off challenging us Basically, he's saying, don't be a hypocrite. He's saying, don't be hypocritical. Don't hear and not do. That's what James is trying to say to us. And in a lot of places for us today, this is big. People think other people are hypocrites. That is the sentiment, and we're going to talk about that a little bit too. So James is trying to get us to say, if you forget what you were instructed, you won't do what you've been told. If you forget what it is you were told to do, you won't act. So don't forget, like you don't forget what you look like. There's actually a rapper who I really like, and this is his quote about it, about sort of this idea. Don't talk about it, be about it. Don't talk about what you do, be about what you do. Let people see what you do. And this is a rapper he's got faith. It's kind of different, I would say. But he's saying, don't talk about it, be about it. Be what you say, right? So get it done is what James is saying. Just do it is what he is saying. You don't forget what you look like, right? You and I know what we look like. And if we do, here's what James is trying to say. Go look at yourself again. Go look at yourself in the mirror again. If you forget, look into the perfect law that gives life. That's what James ends up saying. So what does the Christian do? James is going to ask, or we're going to talk about here. What do you do when you forget? You remind yourself again. You remind yourself of the gospel. You remind yourself if you've forgotten. And this is echoed so beautifully in the Psalms. Just kind of maybe think about it. It's Psalm 1. It starts off and it's gorgeous. It says, "Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night." Meditate on God's word day and night so you don't forget what you ought to do. Then you know what you've got to do. James is saying, if you're looking back into the law, if you're constantly looking back into, if you're like the psalmist, probably David, right? At this point, you're saying, if I am this person, if I'm looking in constantly, I will never forget what it is that I ought to do. So plant yourself beside the law of the Lord. Remember, we're going to get back to this hypocritical thing that we face today. I did some research, and it blew me away that what the culture thinks about hypocrites. We're going to talk about that. But here's the sentiment I feel. We're suspicious of everybody. Politicians, corporations, CEOs. We nail our leaders. And one of our leaders in Canada recently got nailed for something. We're saying, you're not who you say you are. You tell us you're something, and then you do something else. And right now, that's bothering people. We're going, why are you doing that? Our biggest sort of things that we nail on these people is that they're in private one thing, and then they're in public another thing. And that's what James is saying. Do you see how relevant this is for us? The Bible's got this incredible way of reminding us of the truths that we're still facing today, the challenges we're facing today. So there's an article written by Matthew Harrington that encapsulates this perfectly. It's out of the Harvard Business Review, and it's called, it's pretty simple. You're going to get what I'm talking about when I say it. He says this, people's trust, this is what the article is, excuse me. People's trust has declined in business, media, government, and NGOs. Perfect. I mean, it's the perfect sweep of the four categories. So here's from the article what it says. In almost 2/3 of the 28 countries we surveyed, the general population did not trust the four institutions to do what is right. The average level of trust in all four institutions combined was below 50%, the first time in a 17-year existence of this study that happened. People are becoming more and more cynical of everything in the world, and so what James is saying right now is be who you say you are, because even now, today, like this was 3 years ago, it's needed. People don't trust governments, they don't trust media, they don't trust NGOs. They're looking for Christians to be honest, to be true, to be noble. The world is dying for it. People are saying, wait, we need this. I'd like you to be who you say you're going to be. I'd like not for you to talk about it, but for you to be about it. That's what I would like for you to do for me as a Christian. So to pivot to the Christian community, there's this growing attack on Christians for being too judgmental, for not accepting many parts of the liberal sort of social fabric that's coming out. And it's up to us to show that we're motivated by love, that we, unlike the religious people that Jesus talked to, actually care about folks. We actually care about people. Remember, religion in its most dangerous form, like Jesus talked about, was when it stopped seeing people as equally qualified for love. Jesus' biggest opponents and the religious people who used their positions to reject others, that's not what we're about. And so people are looking at us trying to say, who are you? And here's the thing about Christianity, we didn't even earn it. It's a grace thing. We didn't even earn it. We have no reason to be proud about what it is that we believe because God chose us. And so, and then this also doesn't mean that we we compromise on truth. We do not compromise on truth. But we ought to do what James is challenging us to do because the world is desperate for it. Remember, we're going to go back to what we talked about last week, was this little word, this Hebrew word called timim, to be complete and perfect. We talked about it, and we've talked about it a lot here. It's actually that our values, again, this is what he's challenging us, our values and beliefs are lining up with our actions. That's what James is all about. The world is becoming cynical. That survey proves it. You got to be a light because people are dying for honesty, nobility. Businesses that run on nobility and honesty are thriving today because people are like, really? You're like that? I thought you were just like that other guy who scammed me last week, or I thought you were just like that politician who said one thing and did another. So be honest. Be true, be noble. The world is dying for it. The culture is dying for it. If you and I can have integrity and integrate these things, in your friend circles, be honest. In your groups, be honest. Be people who fight for others, not fight with others. Gossiping over people, be a hearer and doer of the word. Don't simply hear and forget. That is how James, we're going to be starting off today. And that is a challenge. Another gut check from James is going, man, do you do what you say? Or are you hypocritical? The world is so cynical today. The survey was just an interesting survey. So I can't believe that people actually are thinking this. We don't trust institutions to do what they ought to. Now we're going to look at some other passages from the book of James to sort of complete this sort of study. We're starting off with hearing and doing the word, and what we're going to be doing is diving in deeper and looking at these other studies, or these other passages of James. So in James 1:27 and James 2:1-4 is going to be where we look next. Here's what James says. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Continues on in James 2. My brothers and sisters, believers in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ must not show favoritism. Suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man, filthy old clothes, also comes in. If you show special attention to the man wearing fine clothes and say, here's a good seat for you, but you say to the poor man, you stand there, sit on the floor by my feet. Have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? So what we're looking at tons to apply here is, again, the Bible is going to speak into our situations. It's constantly doing that. It's basically challenging us, I think, on two things. Are we people who serve? Do you and I serve? And what do we think about status and status symbols? And that's what we're going to be talking about. How much do you like status? How much do you love widows and orphans? And that's what we're going to be talking about. So the first thing I think James is challenging us here is to wake up to what we're doing in our areas of giving and service. Are we committing ourselves to service? What in our week is allotted to someone other than us? What in our week is our time allotted to people other than ourselves, our family, and our friends? I think especially kind of American, especially Canadian Christianity, our biggest problem is comfort. So what we've got there is saying, okay, get uncomfortable, start actually serving, and see what happens. And here's the thing. When we look at our own life and our own calendars, is who's in our calendar a lot? Is it me? Is it always just me? If it is just me, then that's the problem. That's what James is saying out. So pull your phone out, pull your calendar out, and take a look at it and say, wait a minute, Monday I'm playing golf, Tuesday I'm playing tennis. This is me dreaming, right? Monday I'm playing golf, Tuesday I'm playing tennis, Wednesday I'm biking. These are things that all serve me. I wish I could do them every day, but that's not good for me if I'm just focused on myself. Oh, I'd love to have a Sunday afternoon. I can't wait to be with my family and all that. Those things are great things, but if they're only benefiting you, if your schedule only benefits you in the advancement of your career and your family, James is going to say, wait a minute, look, I thought religion was about the orphans and the widows, and that's what James is going to challenge us with. So get involved in something for like 4 hours. Devote yourself to it. The benefits are incredible. That's not why we do it, but it is there. And it's another whack to our heads to say, what do you think Christianity is? What do you think it is? Are you benefiting others? Are you serving others? Or is it just yourself? And I have to look at myself and say, well, okay, what am I doing with my free time? There's a time to do the fun things we love, but there's certainly a time to get Christian with it, as James would say. James is going to kind of poke us there and say, what of your time is devoted to others? And I think for us, it could be widows and orphans, but it could be other people too. Other people in need. I think it's what really James is trying to help us. This is what church is all about. It's pushing past comfort, like we talked about, that we struggle with, I think, in North America a little bit, is this comfort, because we do have things that other people don't, so we struggle with it. But let us hold this up to our own hearts and our own schedules. Do I love myself lots, or am I loving others? Do I love myself a ton? What do I prioritize? Am I prioritizing other people or just me? Look at your schedules and ask yourself the question. You could pause me and say, hey, we got to talk as a family. What are we doing to give back? What are we doing to give of our time? How are we benefiting other people? And this, again, is what James is going to challenge us with. There's a guy at our church. His name's Charles Offer, and he is the example of service that I see. Now, Charles is a dude. He's a dude, vice principal. So he comes in. He's with the kids all day. He's kind of being an authoritarian guy. He's like, hey, stay in line, whatever. Then he kind of comes home. And he's told me he gets up at 5:30. So he comes after school. He comes home. He grabs a bite to eat quickly. Then he kind of runs this way towards the church. I'm not really sure how. He gets here so that we can worship. So he helps the kids get in ready for worship, and he helps them along. And he's like, hey, kids, we're going to play today, and they're doing crazy stuff. And he's saying, hey, let's get in line. Let's focus. He's a great guy, too. But he's got to keep them in line. And then we do our youth stuff. And that's only practice. So then we do our youth stuff. We have a sermon, and then we play games. Then they sing, and then I preach. And by like 9:30, we're done, and for the whole sermon, I see Charles just nodding off like dead because he's so tired. He's been up since 5:30. He leaves. He barely leaves the church in one piece. He's like, oh my gosh, but he doesn't even complain about it. He serves. The guy can barely walk out. I've seen him, just countless retreats with me, come to retreats, come to snow camp, come to whatever, overflow, and just give of himself. I mean, he's up at 5:30 on Thursdays. This is when we had a normal schedule, and he would leave the church, if he was lucky, by 10. By the end of it, I was just like, you got to leave, dude. Like, just get out of here. Go home. You need to sleep, right? So I asked him why. How long have you done it first? He's 15 to 20 years he's done this kind of stuff with youth. So, whoa, why? Because the kids deserve it, is his answer. That's it's something to that effect, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I don't remember exactly, but it's something that they deserve good attention, and he gives that, and it's amazing. So he's falling asleep half the time through my sermon, but what I'm realizing is, the words are just going into his little dream, and he's able to hear the gospel again. So I just see him, I'm like, you know what, you can sleep over there, please, because you deserve to sleep. The kids deserve you, and then you deserve a little nap, right? So that is this is the sham of America, that go retire at 55. It's a scam. Go retire and give up. Don't do that. Don't go play golf 6 days a week and be a loser. Like, get out there and help people. This is what Charles is showing me. I mean, the guy is like, he's like, I probably could do other things on Thursday night. I could probably be with my wife. I could probably be, at home gardening. He's like, no, I'm going to be here. I'm going to help the kids. It's the biggest scam that North America has us caught in, that cannot wait to retire, and I can't wait to, do my own thing and collect shells in Florida and have a nice boat. That's not what the Christian life's about. It is not wrong to enjoy those things, but we got to get the priorities straight. And I got to get my priorities straight. I got to look after this and go, oh man, am I just a hearer, or am I a doer of the word? And you got to take the schedule, put it beside James and say, wait a minute, these things line up? Charles is a perfect example of just consistency. This guy is just there for us. It's amazing. And it just changes our youth group when we have a guy like Charles around. We've got these, and this is only one guy. Our church is full of these people. We got our tech team, who is incredible. They're dealing with us crazies, trying to get this off so you guys can hear the gospel. We've got people in Kids Branch, and Charles also helps in Kids Branch. We've got people on the tech team, the sound booths, everywhere. We've got these people who serve and give, and people I don't even know who serve and give. And so thank you for that. That is so important for us to get. Are we helping those in need? Are we giving? Who are the widows and the orphans in your life? And are you giving to them? What does your schedule reflect? Now, I want to pivot a little bit to tackle about what we all struggle with that James is going to touch on, which is what he did. How do you treat the poor person when they come to you? Attributing status to objects we wear or own. One time I had someone ask me a question that really got to me. Would you love someone who appears to be from like a different status than you? Like from a wealth perspective, okay? So can you love them easy, or have you already decided in your mind they're unlovable? So he was talking about like homeless people, I think more is what he was trying to get at. How do you feel when homeless people come up to you? I think my first reaction is to not love them, right? Sometimes I go, this is uncomfortable. Oh man, this is awkward. Like sometimes just from their appearance, right? It's just, you might feel off-putted. James is saying, that has nothing to do with this, but it's our first reaction. So he asked me, hey, what if it's not nice what the clothes they're wearing? Or maybe they are looking like really beat up, or just like they've had a night on the streets, or maybe they've always been there. Right? Are you willing to love them? Do you treat them differently than if you saw the homeless guy and then a Lamborghini and the guy getting into the car? How do you treat those two people? If they're right beside each other, how do you treat them? This is such a pressing issue we face today. Again, it's another practical thing. It's another, I deal with this. You deal with this all the time in our movies and everything. How they look, what they wear. The guy's wearing a suit over there. Who cares if the guy's wearing a suit over there and the guy over there is not wearing a suit, and the girl over there is not wearing a suit, and she's homeless, let's say, or whatever. It doesn't matter. Just saying, who cares what they're wearing? Get it out of your mind that you're attributing status to what they wear. James doesn't care. He's saying, well, what does it matter? Jesus loves the world. He loved the world that he came. So don't worry about what they're wearing. He loves them all. So we got to tip the scale. We got to fight against our normal, natural reaction is to love people of status. Wow, nice car, man. You must be really important. You must be really awesome. You're maybe valued in God's eyes more, right? We go there. Our brains go there. We also go, it's so much easier to love those that are easy to love, right? That look good from appearance, the clothes, they look nice. Do not show any partiality between a BMW and a Cobalt. And I'm using a Cobalt because it's my car, okay? Now, my car isn't the nicest looking car, but who's driving around them and how and why? Who cares? Our culture does, and we can't look like the culture. James is saying, don't be polluted by the world. Be different, right? So don't look at the BMW and then look at the Chevy Cobalt, which I have personal affection to, and make some sort of difference between them. Show no partiality between the person who drives that car and the person who drives that car. And our culture this is what we do. It's based off what we have, the house, the material. How does it change? Does it change how we feel about people? And if it does, we've got to check ourselves. We can show no partiality between those who have nothing, between those who have tons. We cannot show partiality. This is what I was thinking is, let's picture the royal halls with homeless in them, with people who don't have nice clothes in them. Let's picture even our own homes, our places of worship, and our living rooms. All classes, all money, whatever, it doesn't matter, all in one place. That's what I see, royal halls with homeless people. That's what James is saying. Who cares what they have? And this is something I think our church embraces really, really well. People from all walks of life, especially from that sort of status. He's saying, it doesn't matter. And we, as a church, we got to embrace that. We got to continue to do that. This is what the world is starving for. They're starving for people who look different, who act different, who talk different, and then ultimately who treat people different. There was a guy I went to school with growing up, actually 1 through 8 and 9 to 12, and he was sort of a different guy. And what was interesting about him, it was he wore clothes that were a little old, and a lot of times it ended up making him smell. So he would come to class in school, and he wouldn't smell as good as other kids. And I did a really good job of going on my way to love this guy. And it turned out to just be a great friendship. And we weren't best friends by any means, but he recognized that I was treating him differently, and that I wanted to go out of my way to treat him differently. And I did not look at him differently. And there's times I have, but this is a story where I didn't, and I really went out of my way to love this guy. Now, we don't have a real relationship up to this day, but that doesn't really matter. I looked at my classmates, and I saw the 25 of them, and I saw this other guy, and I thought, you look different than everybody else. James is saying true Christianity. This is for all homes, our homes that we look at, our cars that we look at, for all of us to say, how are we treating those people who look differently? And so I was leaning in. This was when I was young. I was leaning in with this guy. I was saying, okay, I'm going to try and love you. And it turned out to be a good relationship that we ended up having. And again, we weren't best friends, but I really leaned in and I said, hey, man, I'm going to love you. And he invited me to his house, and I would hang out with them. And up to even a couple years ago, we messaged on Facebook every once in a while. And it was a great thing to be able to lean into. But I didn't look at him and say, you're not worthy of love because of what you look like. I had to lean in. Yes, it might have been awkward. And sometimes I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to go over to his house. I don't know if I want to be invited into his home. But I know I ought to be. James is saying, man, we have a huge issue. He's speaking into our culture. We have a massive issue with this. What do you think about that? Check your heart and say, do I do what James is telling me? This is a challenge, man. I'm not saying I do this all the time. I'm saying, man, I got to come under this and say, I got to change. That is what James is challenging us to there. So what we were able to do today really is look at being a hearer and then a doer of the word. You've heard the word, right? Today I spoke the word to you. So if you forget yourself, if you forget what you look like, if you forget what the word is, plant yourself, meditate on it day and night like the psalmist does in Psalm 1, like David does in Psalm 1. Don't forget what you look like. Don't forget what the gospel is. Lean in and dig in there and say, okay, this is what the gospel is. Meditate on it day and night. And remember, what we're seeing today in our culture is this growing cynicism toward these four sections of our lives, the NGOs, the governments, the media, that kind of place that the world is feeling more and more cynical. And James is saying, we've got to integrate that, especially as Christians. This is a long time ago James is writing this, and it still applies to us today. We've got to be people who talk about it and do it. Don't just talk about it, be about it. So do both, integrate both, be hearers and doers of the word. And we've got to look at our schedules. We've got to look at our time given. We've got to look at the people around us and say, is my schedule, is it all about me or is it about other people? Am I a Charles Offer? I got to be a Charles Offer. I got to be barely making it out of the church by the time that I'm done the night. That's what Charles does. I want to be like that. I don't want to be what North American Christianity tells me to be, which is to have a nice house and retire at 55. I want to give. I want to be like Charles. That's what I want to be like. And again, are we people who love others despite what they're wearing? The suit, who cares? Jesus says, go love the guy who's not wearing the suit too. Invite them all in to the banquet. Right? And we've got to imagine our banquets in our homes and then do it. Imagine them with people from all walks of life, wearing all different levels of status, whatever that is, right? But sometimes we go, okay, they might be having a hard time. I got to love them. That's what's going to separate us from the world. That's what James 1 to 2:13 is about. So we've kind of got through the chapter 1 and chapter 2 a little bit, and there's even more we could dive into in these two chapters. And so what we're going to have is the next couple weeks is another series that Ken's going to be diving into, but I'm sure that we'll be able to open the book of James again soon because of its practicality and just how much it's going to rattle our cage and help mature and young Christians really walk out their faith. And so now we're going to turn to our worship team for our final song, and then I will come back with our final prayer.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show
thank you, worship team, for all you do, for etching out time in your schedules to prepare the songs for us and to really bless us through music. It's fantastic. And what we really want to focus on and what I want to pray over you is this, that we pray we would integrate our faith into our lives, that we would be people who say things and then do things, that we would make time in our schedules for other people, not just to benefit us. Lord, we also pray that we would be able to love people from all classes and status areas, God, that we would be people who love rich and love poor, and that we would start to see our homes and our banquets, right, filled with all types of people. And you warn us against partiality, so help us be people that are integrators, that are people of integrity, that love people from all walks of life. That's what James 1 to 2:13 is all about. And I really hope that these messages have been some sort of help for you. We'll see you guys here next Sunday.